Hi, I'm Paul, and there's something that Rick Beato is not telling his 3 million subscribers on YouTube, but I'm going to tell you all about it today. Oh, and as always, I've got gas. But you know what? We're not here to talk about this today. We'll go over this some other day. Today, I want to talk to you about Rick Beato and music, a particular form of music. Before I get started, I should just explain this environment for you. For those of you who watched my other videos, you're probably wondering, where are you? It looks like you're in a hotel. Well, my home was destroyed by a man-made disaster, courtesy of the great state of Minnesota. Thank you, Minnesota. So in order to get to work, I had to get this cheap, dilapidated, drug addict infested motel room near my employer. So that's why I'm here. And I thought, as long as I'm here, I'm going to make some videos. And this one's important, I think. So let's look at Rick Beato first. It was probably about 2 years ago when I first saw Rick Beato on YouTube. You know, the YouTube search engine was feeding him to me, which the YouTube algorithm picks and chooses. It censors, it decides who lives and who dies, you might say. And for whatever reason, it felt that Rick should live. And so when I first looked at his video, the first thing I noticed, like everyone else probably, is wow, look at that hair. Look at that hair. Whew. And then you look behind him, and he's got all these outrageously nice guitars, nicely, set up in stands, and then he's in this studio environment that is gorgeous and very spacious. Just a beautiful environment. So you put all that together, the hair and the guitars and all that, and obviously the first thing I thought of was, what a jerk. What a jerk. Look at this guy just showing off all his stuff. You don't have what I have, is what I was thinking. But then I watched a video of his, and then another, and another, and another, and I learned, as you probably all have learned, that Rick Beato is one of the greatest things on YouTube. He's a great guy. He is probably one of the nicest guys on YouTube. His channel is absolutely legit. It is one of the, for musicians, it's a gold mine. And gold mine, not a gold mine. And you gotta love Rick Beato. So let me first of all give you a few reasons why I love Rick Beato. And Rick, don't take that the wrong way. All right. First of all, he did these, and I think he still does, these videos called What Makes This Song Great. And he takes the individual tracks, the original tracks, and he breaks them down and pulls out just the guitar, the drums, the bass, whatever. And it's one of the great mysteries of YouTube as to how he got those tracks, those isolated tracks. And there's all these people who think they know the answer, and like people who claim to know what Bigfoot is. It's like, yeah, I know Bigfoot. Yeah, he's a friend of mine. We have dinner every Thursday. Yeah, I got photos and video. I don't have them with me right now, but I've got him. He's up and up. And that's how some of the people talk about Rick Beato and his tracks. Personally, I don't want to know where he gets the tracks because it may involve the mafia or something like that. I don't know. Most likely, though, it's just he knows everybody in the industry and he has ways of getting those things. But thank goodness he does, because those What Make This Song Great videos are fantastic. They really break down the songs, the individual parts. They let you hear things you couldn't hear before. Just wonderful. Anyone who's heard those loves them, I'm sure. Another great thing about Rick is his knowledge of music theory. I don't know if he has perfect pitch. It sure seems like he does. His son, I believe, does, but if he doesn't, he's awfully close. But Rick can hear some music, and he can just tell you, oh, that's a C7 sus chord. He loves sus chords, and he just knows what these are off the top of his head. It's amazing, and it's inspiring to, I think, all of us out there who didn't study the theory we should have when we were younger. Either because you didn't know any better, like me, came from a small town with a small school where the band director didn't really know much about music, kind of like the history teacher was the wrestling coach, that kind of thing. Um, or, you just didn't want to put the effort in to learn it. But he's just absolutely inspiring, his knowledge of theory, and it adds a whole new dimension to music when you're listening to it. Um, Another reason I really like him, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen. I can't see over here. Um, Another reason I like Rick so much is he is an advocate for fair use of copyrighted material. The law says that you may use, I can read you a newspaper article, I can show it to you, I can read you a magazine article, I can show you a clip from a TV show or a movie, I can play a clip from music. In theory, I could even play the whole song if I'm talking all over it and everything, if it's done for the purposes of education, commentary, criticism. The things that people who think do to build on the shoulders of giants. But legislators and judges aren't known all the time for being the greatest thinkers in the world. And at the bottom of that list, really close to the bottom, are music executives. And Rick holds their feet to the fire. He makes it perfectly clear that this is totally wrong. The law says we are allowed to do this, and it's a cornerstone, maybe not a cornerstone, but it's one of the lower floor stones of building a civilization. And the idea that just for the sake of money, and even more than money, control, that the music industry and some of the artists themselves do not allow people to play their stuff, especially for the purpose of criticism and education, commentary. That's ludicrous. It reminds me of, you remember Bill Hicks, the comedian, back in the early 90s, and he had a bit where he talked about the Judas Priest trial, where some parents had sued Judas Priest, the band, claiming that their lyrics inspired their kids to commit suicide. And, Bill says, yeah, I just had one question that didn't seem to come up at the trial. What rock and roll band, rich, famous, women surrounding them 24 hours a day, which one of them wants to kill their audience? Who wants to get rid of your audience? Let's get this audience, the people who are paying for us so that we don't have to work in a gas station or in a shoe store. Let's get rid of them all, because I want to go back to cleaning sewers and driving a turd burglar down the street. That's what I want to do. Okay, you see, it doesn't make any sense, but again, like I just said, the Judas Priest trial. You see, lawyers, judges, music, you see, people who aren't really thinking all that strongly. It's the same thing with what Rick talks about, okay? The rule of thumb here that should be obvious and intuitive to anyone is, if I don't know that you exist, I cannot buy your products. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's like that contemporary composer of Mozart, right? What was his name? The oh wait, actually, none of us know his name. And that's why we can't listen to his music or buy his products, isn't it? Because we don't know his name. You see, if you're a stupid music executive or an artist who isn't looking after their own interests, they might say, well, I don't want people to hear my work. I went to all the work to create all this, or I'm the executive who's exploiting the people who did all the work and I'm taking all the money. But I don't want anybody to actually hear it, because if they hear it, they might like it. If they like it, they might come to a concert and spend some money. They might buy a hat or a shirt. They might buy our albums. They might tell other people. And we can't have that. We're businessmen. Right? If there's any music executives listening to this video by any chance, You're not worth talking to. Rick Beato stands up for us, the ones who do want to talk about and share music with others, criticize it, positive and negative, constructive criticism. We want to build on the shoulders of giants. So bravo to Rick for doing that. He even testified in front of Congress about this. Now, the best thing about Rick, I think the thing I like the most about him is he is like me in a way that I'm not entirely sure I've run into other people, anyone else like this. There's a few who've come close, but I'm the only one who's been like this, and Rick is the second one in this long life of mine that I've found who does this. What I mean is when we listen to great music, it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. We hear it and we're like, ooh. And I know a lot of people play air guitar and air drums and stuff, but what I'm saying is we're 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 engaging the music. And you can just see it in our expressions. I mean, for me, I just light up and I start moving and bouncing, and I'm not just someone tapping their foot and all that. It's specific stuff in the music that I'm really engaging with and I'm learning from, or I've already learned about it and just amazed by it, or the virtuosity of a player or something. I'm just in awe, and you can see it in my expression and the way the way I listen to music. And Rick is like that. When you watch him, he's listening to these tracks and he'll just be, "Ooh, wow, wow," and he'll pick up a guitar and he can play the thing really well. He'll play the keyboard. He can play it really well. Come on, Rick, let's hear you sing. Even I've tried that and it was a disaster, but at least I did it. Let's hear you sing, Rick. That's one of the things I really like about Rick is he just shows what music really ultimately is. It's an aesthetically beautiful thing in this world, a world that is, I think we'll agree, is becoming uglier all the time. And you've just got to grab hold of those things that are beautiful and just savor them for all they're worth. Now, that's why I like Rick so much. Now, there's a few things he doesn't quite do as well, and this is my opinion. And I'm not trying to put him down. I'm just pointing these out. Um, he seems to try to be very, very tactful when it comes to saying anything that might be divisive or which might alienate a viewer. Now, I don't know if he's doing that because that's his normal way of behavior. He doesn't like to offend people. For I'm the opposite. If there's something to say, I'm gonna say it. I have to say it. I'm cheating you if I don't say it. If I believe it's that important, I have to say it. I can't deprive you of that. That's wrong. It's up to you whether you like it or not. And if you don't, you can go to another channel or disregard it or forget it or forgive me or whatever. But or try to argue the point with me and change my mind, whatever. But everyone's different in that regard. But the thing is, Rick is very, very tactful. And the problem is, I'm not entirely sure it's sincere. And what I'm talking about specifically is this. Quite often in his videos, the topic of today's music versus music really any time in human history before today's music comes up. And the obvious question is the stuff today up to par? And most people I've talked to who know anything about music, not what they're doing today, but music, the thing that was all through human history up until recently, most of those people would say, no, the music today is horrific. It's a freak show from the pit of hell. And it was starting with all that boom, 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 hip hop, rap stuff. And I mean, I see some things in hip hop and rap that I like and I can appreciate. I've tried doing it myself. I mean, I'm not trying to discount the whole genre, but geez, how long can you go on just listening to boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, 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 ba boom? How long can you're going to go your whole life listening to that when there's Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin and Rusfiggy and all the bluesmen and the gospel singers and Woody Guthrie and Elvis and just Everyone, well, there's all this stuff out there, and you're just going to spend your whole life boom, ba boom, boom, boom. Rick seems to, I'm guessing here, but based on the little creases in his cheeks and his eyes and the little squint and the little wincing of pain that he tries so hard to hide, my feeling is that he thinks modern music should be banned by God, that it should just be outlawed. Anybody who listens to it or produces it or distributes it should be thrown into a prison because it is destroying civilization. It's that bad. Because music is more than just sound. Music is mathematical. There's science behind music, how strings vibrate. Music encompasses so much of what is the world. Somebody who really learns music appreciation has to learn all these other things about the world. But if you spend your whole life just boom, ba boom, 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 your brain is mush. You haven't exercised your brain. You haven't done anything with it in terms of your interaction with music. And I think most people see a correlation between people who listen to that music and that kind of mentality versus people who know real music appreciation, and they seem to be a little, shall we say, their brains are a little bit more active and well exercised. And I'm trying to be tactful, okay? And I don't know why, I'm usually not, but I'm trying to be tactful, folks. But I mean, the fact is, today's music sucks. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. It's repetitive, computer-generated garbage that has to have auto-tune because these same music executives pull some girl out of a high school, put a tight dress on her, and she can't sing, so they have to throw the auto-tune on her. But if you build it, they will come. If you put it out there, the people who aren't thinking very well, again, the people who don't have enough going on upstairs to really appreciate music, they're going to fall for it hook, line, and sinker. And it's a huge market. It's most people, regrettably. It wasn't that way 100 years ago, but that's where we're at today. Look at the education system we have. It teaches, it indoctrinates with everything except teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. What do you expect? Rick won't just come out and say it. So he'll sometimes say things like, "Well, let's go over to Spotify and just see, let's take let's take a look. Let's see if maybe." And he'll try so hard to find something good about it. It's like, "Ooh, they used a sus chord there," and he'll try so hard, but you can just see the smoke coming out of his ears, and the gears inside are just like spinning up, just like this is garbage. This is horrible. What's happened to music? And he won't come out and say it. So, and again, I'm not trying to put down Rick. He has to do what he has to do. He has his own temperament. I have mine. Maybe he doesn't want to alienate 3 million subscribers because his subscribers can help him pay for a home, for example. Whereas I'm stuck here barely able to pay for this ridiculous hotel until I can get back on my feet. But I don't make money on my channel, so I'm going to be a little more upfront and blunt about things. Folks, the music today sucks. It's horrifying. It isn't music. I used to say music when I was younger. I said that music was rhythm, melody, and harmony in some capacity. Those are the 3 elements of music. But that was before computers could start generating rhythms and melodies and harmony. There's something more, and what is more about music than that requires a brain to comprehend, and that's what we've lost. So music, like everything else in our society, has created this division, this like just a hot knife through butter between people who are intellectually capable of even comprehending what good music is, and boom, 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 boom. I'll leave it at that. So that's one area where I think, and again, I'm not trying to bust Rick's chops. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and maybe it doesn't really matter in the end. He's appealing to people who have some capacity to comprehend music and appreciate it, so it doesn't really matter. But here's the thing. By the same token, there's one thing, sorry if I hit the mic again, there's one thing he is completely omitting. And I went through his channel before I did this to make sure that I didn't miss something, and I searched as hard as I could. And for all his videos, I didn't find a single reference to this. And folks, he is depriving 3 million viewers of access to an entire catalog and genre of music that is filled with extraordinary musicmanship, virtuosity, some of the best lyric writing you've ever heard, people who can control their voices on par with the greatest singers of all time, shredders like any other. Folks, I have to ask the question, why would Rick, on a channel like his, why would he just not even mention this and just deprive 3 million people of the knowledge that this exists? And I honestly don't know the reason. It could be that he's trying not to alienate people, not lose subscribers. And okay, he makes money. He probably lives off of that channel, and that's cool. Godspeed to him. Good for him. I don't, so I'm going to tell you about it, folks. And the reason that I say it could alienate, and it shouldn't, but there's no reason it should. This is music, folks. Who cares? I mean, people listen to death metal and gothic metal and rotten egg thrash, and I mean, they come up with all these names for all these things, and nobody has any problem listening to that, or at least some people, or at least people don't mind just mentioning that it exists. But there's one genre that they will not mention even exists, and neither does Rick. And what I'm talking about is, drum roll please, I can, or it'll... Christian rock. Don't hit the stop button, because I got good things to say here. You don't want to deprive yourself of it either. I have never heard him talk about Christian rock, and the strange thing is, the Christian rock I'm talking about is the good stuff, not the stuff today. Like everything else, contemporary Christian music has been corrupted to the core. It isn't even Christian to speak of. It throws the name Jesus in songs, but things like Hillsong, the industry's been completely taken over by the secular music industry, and the people who are in it do not behave like Christians. The Bible says, "By your fruits you shall be known as mine." Well, their fruits are not very good. Their fruits are pretty rotten. The way they behave, the way they speak, who they hang out with. I mean, some of these people are hanging out with Marilyn Manson, people who are clearly working for the other team, shall we say. And that's not what a true Christian would do. So that is the Christian music industry really starting around 1990. It started to just get totally corrupted and bought out. I'm going to put a link in the description here to a long video. It's a long video by a guy named Josh. His channel's called Service Christi, and it's an expose of how corrupted to the core the Christian music industry has become today. And he's just barely scratching the surface, just with a 2.5 hour video. Folks, you don't understand how bad it is. It's part of the general apostasy of the church, which, without getting into the Bible and religion, but this time, 2,000 years after Jesus, which is about the time Jesus is due to return and the rapture of the church and all that, the church was not supposed to have a revival. According to the Bible, it's the opposite. The church is going to fall away and join the world. And that's why you have Kenneth Copeland, Rick Warren, preachers who are called Cash Dollar and all this, Joel Osteen, Hillsong. That's why you have these worldly nightclubs basically posing as Christian churches. All right, the Bible said it was going to happen in the end times. And what I'm talking about is the height of Christian rock and roll. That was in the 80s. I mean, you can almost cut it right down the middle of the 80s. A little bit at the end of the 70s, a little bit going into the 90s, but that's really about it. There were a number of Christian artists and Christian bands who came out of nowhere. They produced phenomenal music, and then they were gone forever, to the point where I can't even learn some of these. I can't even learn what the names of the band members were. They went back to selling shoes and working in gas stations and stuff because they were not trying to get rich and famous. They were not trying to get a different woman in their bed every night. One of these bands, Bloodgood, they did songs about the crucifixion and the resurrection, and they toured with their family, just basically living in poverty, and their family would come out and act the parts, and they would do the whole scene. I mean, it was just amazing. It was a family affair. These were bands who the reason they were in business wasn't for business. They were going out looking for opportunities to witness to people, to help people get saved, to accept Jesus, to know Jesus. And this was a vehicle for that. And I'll just give you full disclosure. I am a Christian, and that's exactly how that happened to me. Can you believe it, folks? Because one of these bands came to my high school when I was a sophomore. My high school. Can you imagine that today? Of course, just throwing this out here just for the sake of thinking about it, we didn't have any school shootings. We didn't have any open drug use that I'm aware of, not even marijuana, throughout my entire high school career, 4 years. Um, I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe there's a correlation, there's something to think about. That is what got me saved, 1983. Now, granted, it took me many years to mature as a Christian, and I'm still not perfect. I still swear too often. The thing is, I don't like it when I do it, and I try not to, and I pray that I will stop. You change. When that happened to me with that band came in front of us at the high school, it was literally like a switch. Something changed. Now, it wasn't like a dramatic change. I didn't just suddenly become a different person. Not at all. Not even close. Nothing of the kind. But something changed. You could just feel it inside that your life was going in a different direction, and it did. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful. If only because for those 40 years since then, 35, 40 years, I now don't feel scared at all by what's going on in the world today because I understand it. The Bible predicted it. The Bible told us what was going to happen. And I'm perfectly comfortable with it while everyone else is biting their nails and stocking up on food and ammunition. Now, the thing was, these bands in the 80s, again, they just came into existence in the 80s. It was a time when they had Christian bookstores that had CDs for sale with the headphones. So you could hear them, you could hear the demos, and it made it a lot easier to sell them. It was just a brief window. They came into existence, and a decade later, they're gone. And then around it, you had either Christian artists who just weren't getting any play, except for, occasional, like a Johnny Cash or something. But most of the artists weren't heard of, like Keith Green. They just didn't get the respect they should have for their talent. You talk about sincerity. Look up Keith Green's life sometime. Watch a documentary of him. But then in the 90s, everything just started flushing down the toilet with everything else in society. The Christian music industry just went downhill. And I'm not here to try to judge each individual in those bands today or anything. That's for God to judge. But the fact is, as an industry, it's a cesspool. And it has nothing to do with Christianity. It has everything to do with their own egos. And ego was the first sin that, before we were even created, that had Lucifer fall, isn't it? That's what started this whole mess. That's why all this is going on, because of a war between God and Lucifer for the sin of pride, of ego. And that's what these Christian artists are doing. They're just all out there. I am a famous Christian artist. I won a Dove Award. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, they don't even look like the same species as the members of these bands in the 80s. These people who are so sincere that they would sleep outside on their luggage, on their equipment rack, if they had to, if that's what it took to get to the next venue and spread the gospel to people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some videos that introduce you to these bands, the ones that I like, and there's a lot more of them, but regrettably where I'm at right now, I just have what I have on my hard drives. But I'm going to introduce you to this music and to the best I can to the band themselves. Again, there isn't much information about some of them at all. But to me, it is a bona fide miracle that these bands came out of nowhere in the 80s, 40 years, one generation, before what many people believe is the end times, the end of all this, when this whole thing's going to wrap up and God's going to win and Satan's going to lose. And everybody who's serving Satan is going to lose with him, big time. One generation before is very important because that means that the people who were raised on these particular bands, these extraordinarily good bands, just bands that don't make any sense that you would have that many good bands at one time. Just like in the secular world, you had, you had Testament, you had Megadeth, some people would say Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer. You had these secular bands that just all came into existence out of nowhere from the underground, more or less, unbelievably talented. Well, the Christian world had the same thing happen, but they didn't have anything behind them. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And then they were gone. But they influenced people of my age, my generation. Well, guess what, folks? Here at the here and now, 10 years before 2,000 years later, which is when everything's supposed to wrap up, my generation is the one running the show in this world. We are the ones running this world. We're about to hand it off to the next generation, but we, my generation, are the ones in charge. We are the generation and the only generation that were directly influenced by these Christian rock bands who largely talked about the end times, not knowing when it was going to happen. For all they knew, it was going to happen in the 80s or the 90s or 100 years from now. They didn't know. These things got clarified over time. You see, it's kind of like, again, without getting religious, but the Bible prophesied that Israel, after Israel crucified Jesus and rejected their Messiah, they were punished. And they were dispersed. The Roman Empire obliterated Israel and spread them to the four winds. So they were in every nation of the earth. There were Jews. And 2,000 years later, in 1947, they come back with their same language, their same customs and culture, everything the same, into their same land, which is the size of New Jersey, by the way, Israel, surrounded by these Arab lands that are the size of Russia or China, all of whom want every single Jew to die. And every time the Arabs attacked Israel, the day after they announced that they were a new country, Israel didn't even have an army, and they won against the combined forces of all the Arab countries, and they gained land. And then the Arabs did it again a few years later, and Israel won again, and they gained land. And then a few years later, the Arabs did it again, and Israel won again, and they gained land. Folks, at some point you gotta consider the possibility that maybe the hand of God is at play here. Well, what happened there can't happen. You don't see the Sumerians coming back to their land. You don't see the Phoenicians coming back to their land with their original language and their original religion. Have you ever met a Phoenician? It's a miracle, folks. The Jews were preserved for 2,000 years for the purpose of coming back right now. And I honestly believe that what happened in the 80s with these Christian bands was just a small part of this wrapping up of things in this world. And I think it was in large part meant to influence my generation because we would be the ones who are controlling things, corporations, legislatures, things like that. We are the ones in control of that, not me personally. I'm just a shoe salesman, relatively speaking, but you know what I mean. At the time when these end time things were going to happen. And don't forget, if you're not aware, what the Bible says is going to happen next is the rapture, which means that the real church, which is not all those buildings you see out there full of people, but the real people who truly know and love Jesus and speak to him daily and know him, we're out of here. We're just all going to disappear. It's called the rapture. That's going to put the world into chaos. The one who comes to bring order to that chaos is called the Antichrist, and for 7 years, it's going to be a miserable existence for those of you who are left behind. In fact, in the last 3.5 years, the Bible says it will be the worst times that humans have ever experienced in the past or ever will experience in the future. Even worse than the flood and Sodom and Gomorrah, which rained fire and brimstone on people's heads. It's gonna be the final wrath of God against the people who rejected him. Well, I really believe that what happened in the 80s with these Christian bands who just kind of came and went and don't even know what their names are and all that, they were there to influence my generation, I believe. Not everybody, obviously not everyone in my generation even heard of them, but it was just a part of all these things like Israel and what's going on in Russia right now, because the Bible makes it clear that Russia with Persia, which is Iran, and is going to attack Israel, and they're going to lose too. Go figure. Um, Probably not a good idea to invade Israel. That's my tip of the day for you. Don't invade Israel. It is probably not going to go well for you. Um, with that, I am going to end this video, and I'm going to make some other videos where I just introduce you to some of this music. Sometimes it's just songs. I just have a collection of songs. There's a couple albums, though, that to me rank right up there with, the top 50, 100 albums of all time. They're in there. Honestly, a couple of them really are approaching the top 10, maybe be in the top 10. They're that good. They're that good. And you've never heard of them. Probably. So, Rick Beato, I do not understand why you have not mentioned this to people. I honestly don't understand. You're in Nashville, the Christian music industry that I'm talking about from the 80s and all that. They were more or less based in Nashville, or a lot of it was. Um, I don't know why you're depriving 3 million viewers of this music. Otherwise, I love what you do, Rick. I appreciate it. I think everyone else does as well. If there's some reason why you're doing this, I'll just pick up the slack here, and my 500 viewers, I don't have 3 million viewers, my 500 viewers will get to be exposed to this great and wonderful music and fascinating story that goes with it. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, for this introduction here. Come back for the videos. I'm not sure how I'm going to put these together. I don't really have the gear with me to talk over the music and such, but I'm going to introduce you to some really cool music. And it runs the gamut from, kind of new wave, Beatle style music, into just straight up, rock and roll like Triumph or something. It's progressive stuff, into very, very heavy, what you might even call dark metal. One of the bands actually did the Book of Revelation for their debut album, and they did it right. And they are the reason I memorized the Book of Revelation 30 years ago. Go figure. At the time, I had no idea I would need that kind of information. But now I do, because now whenever I watch the news, instead of biting my nails and buying ammunition, I just think back to the album and I'm like, oh, God said that was going to happen. Okay, cool. I love this stuff. All right, folks, thanks for being here, and I hope you'll come back for the next videos there. Rick Beato, please think it over. 3 million viewers you could expose to this music. Why are you depriving them? I don't know. Take care, everybody. Really appreciate you being here today.